Previously on Apollo Justice, Ace Attorney. Apollo, perhaps you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, damn it. The hottest person in this courtroom is the killer. Shazbot, my mentor isn't going to die this time. He's going to be found guilty of murder.
Hello, I'm Unca Crunk. Welcome back to Apollo Justice, where we've just discovered that our mentor is actually the killer.
Court will now reconvene. Defense Attorney Christoph Gavin, will you please take the stand?
Now we just have to prove it.
Now then, if you would, Mr. Payne.
Yes, Your Honor. Well, the witness state his name and occupation.
Is this farce necessary, Your Honor?
Believe me, far stranger things have gone on in this courtroom.
Fine, I'll play along.
First, there's one thing we need to have made clear. How did you know about the secret beneath the victim's hat?
By secret, I guess he means the fact that Mr. Smith was bald. Forgive my curiosity, but what is it about this fellow's head? Your Honor seems to have an inordinate interest in it.
Objection!
Oh, hello.
I wouldn't call it inordinate, Mr. Gavin.
Mr. Wright!
What do you think you're doing, Wright? Wow, things sure look different from the other side. Know what I mean, Apollo? Speaking of looking from the other side, let's consider something for a second. The victim wore that hat all night, never taking it off except for that one time. At that one time being the instant he was hit.
Oh!
When Mr. Wright returned from reporting the crime, the hat was lying on the floor. Mr. Wright picked it up and placed it on the victim's head. In other words, in order to have seen Mr. Smith's bald head, you would have had to have been there in the hideout at the time of the crime. In other words, I must be the real killer, is what you're trying to say.
Not bad, Apollo. Mr. Gavin?
I'm afraid that I haven't been entirely honest with the court.
You know what?
Oh, I assure you, I had the noblest of intentions. I did it all to protect my client, Mr. Wright.
Me?
Yet, I'm afraid in the current situation, I see little reason to hide anything. Very well. Allow me to tell you the truth of what happened that night.
Oh, really?
Finally, you may begin your testimony. Tell us, how were you involved in the events of that fateful night?
Witness testimony.
That fateful night. The rage I sensed in that man that night troubled me, so I returned to the club. I went down to the basement and peeked in through the little window to the hideout. It must have been right after the murder took place. The victim was dead, as he appears in the photo. A bald head, an unconscious girl, and Wright, holding a bottle in his hand. I sensed that it was not the best place for me to be at the time, so I left. That's when the call came from Wright.
So, you witnessed the murder?
For better or worse, I missed the actual moment of the deed.
Mr. Gavin, may I remind you that you are on Mr. Wright's defense team. Your testimony is clearly disadvantageous to your client.
It's even more disadvantageous to myself if I cover for him, Your Honor. What else could I say? I'm standing on the witness stand, after all.
So you are, Mr. Gavin.
And you had to testify, as you just did. You had to tell them you saw the scene of the crime through that little window. Mr. Wright, you had to say that. Because that was the only probable window of opportunity. Right, Apollo?
Oh!
Mr. Wright, the defense should do the cross-examination, not the defendant. Mr. Justice, are you prepared?
Yes, Your Honor. I can't believe I'm going up against Mr. Gavin. This trial is getting weirder and weirder, and it's still just a tutorial. Cross-examination, start.
The rage I sensed in that man that night troubled me, so I returned to the club.
Hold it!
That man, you mean Mr. Smith?
He was different from the other customers. His aura, shall we say. I knew he was a serious poker player, but it was more than that.
So then you knew the true nature of your client's job?
Of course, but I also knew he wasn't engaged in gambling, which would be illegal.
Well, makes sense that he'd know. They were friends, after all.
Worried for my friend, I returned to the club. You see, I feared this Mr. Smith might be someone coming to settle an old score.
I see. What happened then?
I went down to the basement and peeked in through the little window to the hideout.
Hold it!
The little window. You mean the one you used to keep watch on the stairs?
Yes, a relic of the ancient past. The Black Marketeers used it, I believe.
Why did you go through the trouble of peeking in through the window? Wouldn't it have been easier to just open the door and go into the room?
I didn't want to upset Wright, you see.
Upset Mr. Wright?
Yes, what if my fears had been unfounded? I'd be walking in on their match. Bad form, to say the least.
So far, everything he's saying makes sense.
It must have been right after the murder took place.
How do you know it was right after the murder?
Really, no need to shout, Justice. I was just getting to that part in my testimony.
Ah, there he is. The coolest defense in the West we know and love. Even when you're standing up there on the witness stand, some things never change.
I was afraid you'd change too, right? But you haven't. You and that overbearing personality of yours.
With friends like these, who needs enemies?
The victim was dead, as he appears in the photo.
Hold it!
By photo, you mean the second photograph of the crime scene?
Precisely. You see, he wasn't wearing his hat then. I saw his head when he was dead.
And then Mr. Wright came along and replaced his hat. Can you describe the scene of the crime for us?
A bald head, an unconscious girl, and Wright holding a bottle in his hand. I sensed that was not the best place for me to be at the time, so I left.
Oh, wait. I'm supposed to press here. Press on everything. Those were the only three at the scene of the crime.
Yes, as far as I saw at least.
Then we're back to where we started. The killer was the defendant, Phoenix Wright. Who else could it have been? But why didn't you talk to the police?
2 reasons. First, I didn't actually witness the very moment of the crime. Second, my office was asked to defend Wright. Even after seeing what I had seen, I couldn't abandon my friend.
There must have been someone else there at the moment of the crime.
Justice, I just said I saw no one, not a soul.
But that goes against what Mr. Wright said.
Yes, this mysterious 4th person. Who would conveniently be the real killer, I suppose?
Glad to see we agree, Mr. Gavin.
Let me pose a question then. Tell me, what possible reason did the real killer have to swap cards in the victim's hand?
Oh, I know this one.
Perhaps you can show us a reason why such a thing would be necessary?
How can I show something I can't find myself? I know this. Remember, Apollo, the card that was swapped out was the 5th ace. The 5th ace, right.
Well, Mr. Justice, The question of why the killer would swap out a card is being raised. Can you point to a reason?
Yes. It's now or never. The defense would like to present evidence to the court. Evidence showing the reason why a card was swapped out.
Then go ahead and point out your reason, Mr. Justice. Why did the killer take the fifth ace?
This.
Take that!
My reason is, this. Is that an ace?
What? Why, it's got blood on it. Right next to the spade. But what?
This is insane. Why wasn't I told about this? Why?
Could this be the missing fifth ace?
Apparently.
Inconceivable. How could you? What are you doing with that card?
Well, that's the thing. Why is Mr. Gavin so upset? It's just a fishy card from some fishy girl.
Oh, that card is mine.
That is, I picked it up at the Borscht Ball Club that night after the murder had occurred. I gave it to my daughter. Cards are stock in trade, after all.
Objection!
No, impossible, unacceptable. The court can't accept this evidence as a fraud.
A fraud? How can you be so sure?
What?
I would think the only person who could claim it was a fraud would be the one who took the real card from the crime scene, the real killer. Allow me to elaborate. What if this trace of blood was the reason? The reason for the killer to take the card from the scene of the crime.
Where are you going with this?
Take another look at the photo and at the victim's head. At the moment of the crime, his hat fell to the floor, and a trickle of blood ran from his forehead down the back of his head. Couldn't a drop of that blood have fallen on one of the cards? Oh, he was facing away from the table. That's why it matters. I suppose. The killer then took the card to hide the blood.
Objection!
Regardless, that evidence is non-permissible. Oh? Right. Regardless of how you wasted the last 7 years, you used to be a lawyer. You know what a serious crime it is to conceal evidence. Oh, we can discuss the finer points of our legal system later. What's important now is that I've answered your question. What are you talking about? You wanted to know why the killer would have taken a card from the crime scene. And now I've told you. That one drop of blood would have been decisive evidence, you see.
Objection!
This is baseless conjecture. Baseless.
Objection!
What? Oh, I assure you it's quite based.
What?
It's amazing, really, how a single drop of blood on a single card can lead us to the truth. It's quite simple. Well, Apollo? Did ya? Try picturing the scene of the crime in your head. Yo. The murder took place in the hideout. The body of the luckless victim was found at the poker table. And before the killer swapped a card out, there was a single card with a drop of blood on it in the victim's hand. Given this, there is one decisive problem with this scene.
Well, what is it?
Let's keep it simple, shall we? Given that there was a drop of blood on the card, whose position in this diagram doesn't fit? The victims, the killers, the witnesses, the second witnesses. Whose position doesn't fit with the bloody card? Well, the killer.
Take that!
Well, for one thing, the killer's in the wrong place, I think.
You think? Mr. Justice, your job here is not to think, but to know.
Just looking at you reminds me of the old days. Not the good old days, per se.
How does a good old penalty sound?
Wait, what?
Let's try that one more time. And Mr. Justice, think before you sink.
But I'm confused. The killer's... Let me try that again. Maybe I clicked the wrong thing.
Take that!
No. Damn it, what? No, the killer's supposed to be on the other side of the table. No. I'm confused. Am I supposed to be moving the victim? That makes no damn sense. Is it because he's facing the wrong way?
Take that!
Well, isn't it the victim's position that's the problem?
I don't follow your logic. I don't follow your logic here, Mr. Justice.
Well, look, the victim was struck on the head, sending him back in his chair. You'd think any blood would fall behind the body, not onto the table in front of him.
Oh.
Take a look at the photo again. If he bled in this position, the blood would fall on the floor, not on the cards.
Wait, that's right. So, what does this mean?
It means the killer was also in the... It couldn't be where the killer is supposed to be. Incidentally, we were sitting in swivel chairs. Dead swivel chairs? Oh, man. Apollo, try turning the chair around. Ow. Okay.
The chair was facing the other way?
It would have to be. So we have to assume that at the time of the murder, the victim's chair was facing away from the table.
When Mr. Wright returned from informing the police, which way was the chair facing?
When I came back to the room, the body was facing as seen in this photo. That would mean the killer turned the chair back around. Let's take the next step. Look at the diagram once more. We know now the victim was facing away from the table at the time of the murder. But this creates another significant contradiction. Again? Let's test your reasoning skills again, shall we? Apollo, whose location on this diagram contradicts our new understanding of the crime? Again, it's the killers, which is what I tried to do the first time. A little too early, apparently.
Take that!
The victim was struck from the front, correct? Indeed. Well, wouldn't it be hard for the killer to hit him from the front? Sitting where his indicator currently is? I would think it'd be quite hard, yeah. Yes, but what you're saying makes no sense. Why would the victim suddenly turn to face the wall in the middle of a game? I believe a sufficient reason will soon come to light. What? There's something in this diagram that makes far less sense, actually. Look again at the diagram. Apollo, if the victim was struck while he was sitting as shown here, where would his assailant be standing? Try marking it on the diagram. Is there such thing as leading the defense? I know there's leading the witness, but damn, dude. Okay, there's no room to put the mark where the killer should be. Well, if he was inside the cupboard, don't worry. Let's think it through and see what we find. We know the victim was facing toward the wall at the time of the crime. That's the only thing we know for sure. Try to forget about everything else. Where would the killer have to be standing to strike our victim from the front? In the cupboard. The killer had to be standing, here. You'll get points for flair, but that's about all you get. Thought I was onto something there, too. I hardly need to point out that standing there would be possible? The victim is facing a solid cupboard. Or are you claiming that the killer climbed the cupboard and hit him from above? It's simple logic, really. If this was the only place the killer could have been standing, then that means at the very moment of the crime... Wait, I know! At the moment of the crime, the cupboard wasn't there.
What's this now?
I mean, that's the only explanation, right, Mr. Gavin? Oh, right. This used to be like a bootlegger's joint, so that cupboard is probably covering a hidden passageway.
Your Honor, I have a suggestion for the defense.
We should arrange to examine the cupboard in the hideout immediately.
Bailiff, send a team to the crime scene immediately. Have them try to move the cupboard.
Your Honor?
What?
There's one more thing your men should look for. Please give this to the bailiff.
Yes, I see. You do belong in the courtroom after all, Mr. Wright.
I do my best. Daba?
Well, let's forge ahead here while we wait. Look at the diagram once again. It's been changed.
If the killer was standing here at the time of the crime, then this cupboard wasn't here, which means... Apollo, try moving the cupboard. Me? Oh, it covers the window. Thank you. As you can see, the cupboard was the problem. At the time of the murder, it has to have been as shown here. Now everything is in place to reconstruct the moment of the crime. Oh my. What's this?
Well, what's it now?
Look at the diagram of the crime scene once more. It appears we found yet another contradiction. What I believe to be the final contradiction, in fact. No, oh, dang! Notice something, Apollo? Our line of deduction is rapidly approaching its logical conclusion.
Now then, Mr. Justice, please point to show the new contradicting indicator. Is it the victim, the killer, the witness, the second witness? Which indicator in this diagram contradicts what we know about the crime?
Okay.
Take that!
About this cupboard. Are we all okay with assuming it was moved?
Sure, why not?
Well, if it was, something really doesn't fit. The cupboard would completely cover up the window to the stairs.
Ah!
That's right. Someone standing outside wouldn't be able to see in. Someone like Mr. Gavin.
What did you say?
Oh. Is the coolest defense in the West losing his cool?
Don't expect me to play along with your little game, right?
It's only a game until someone gets killed, Mr. Gavin. And someone was, while the window to that room was blocked by a cupboard. So, Mr. Gavin, perhaps you'd like to explain to the court. Exactly where did you witness the crime scene from? Excuse me, Your Honor.
Order! This is a court of law and I will have order.
We just now received word from our investigative team at the Push Bowl Club. They've examined the cupboard in the hideout, Your Honor.
Oh? And what did they find?
Well, Your Honor, it turns out there's a secret passage behind it.
What?
Yes, I believe I mentioned something of the sort before. This is one of the tricks to the room many of our regulars know about. I do remember him saying something about that now that he mentions it. A secret passage is a handy thing to have when you're engaged in illegal goings-on. Never know when you might need to duck away from the eyes of the law. So the room had a secret passage. Where's it go? The other side connects to the restaurant above. The underworld bosses could get away from the cops and enjoy a cold bowl of borscht, no doubt. Just like our killer. Well, you see where our line of simple deductive reasoning has led us, Apollo? I see it, but I don't believe it. That girl wasn't kidding when she said I needed this trump card for the last hand. At the time of the murder, the window was blocked and the victim's hat was only off his head for the few minutes between Mr. Smith's murder and Mr. Wright's return from calling the cops. In other words, the only place anyone could have seen the victim's bald head was from the inside of the hideout. Well, Mr. Gavin, come on, say something.
Dare I ask what really happened that night?
Actually, I think we can probably figure it out ourselves at this point. That night, for whatever reason, our killer had a date with Mr. Smith. A date with destiny. There he crouched, hidden in the secret passageway behind the cupboard, holding his breath, waiting for just the right moment. Then the chance came, and he took it. Blah! Eek! What? Why did you do that? Wait here, I'll get help. And so on and so forth. Ms. Olga O'Reilly was out cold. O'Reilly, sorry, and just struck by Mr. Smith. But his time was soon to come. Mr. Wright went upstairs to call the cops, leaving Mr. Shady Smith alone in the hideout with the unconscious dealer. Then our killer stepped out from the secret passage and into the hideout. Are you auditioning or summing up? I can do both. Anyway, the victim must have heard the cupboard sliding aside. He wheeled his chair around to look and... Bam! Whammo! Yes, thank you. After the deed was done, the criminal must have seen the blood on the card. He would have, of course, realized the need to destroy the evidence. That single spot of blood told the whole story of the crime. Too bad for him, he didn't linger any longer in the hideout that night. He might have noticed the cards on the floor. And the fact that they were all red.
Well, it seems this trial has taken yet another turn. I'm truly sorry I had to see this day come, Mr. Gavin.
Mr. Gavin?
Mr. Payne!
Yes, Your Honor.
The prosecution will continue its investigation. As for Mr. Phoenix Wright, the defendant, he is hereby cleared of all suspicion. Believe me when I say that I don't believe this is happening, Mr. Gavin. But I'm afraid circumstances call for me to issue a warrant for your arrest immediately.
Objection!
Ow.
Oh, no need to apologize. I rather enjoyed myself. It's not every day you get to witness a legendary attorney's dirty tactics firsthand.
Your point, Mr. Gavin?
Frankly, Your Honor, I'm shocked that a person of your caliber would be taken in by such a low-grade parlor trick.
Excuse me?
The defendant is cleared of all suspicion? This is hardly the time for jokes, Your Honor. Mr. Wright hasn't proven anyone's guilt or innocence here. What he has done is use illegal evidence to put the blame on someone else. And not just anyone else, but me, his own defense attorney.
Illegal evidence?
Objection!
Let me ask you, Mr. Gavin. Is there still any reason at present to suspect me of wrongdoing?
Of course. This bottle, for instance.
A bottle of grape juice? Mr. Wright was drinking?
Oh, do you intend to explain away the fingerprints on the murder weapon? And not just any fingerprints. Am I right, Mr. Payne?
Yeah, actually, yes. The fingerprints on the bottle were upside down. I seem to recall this being an issue earlier.
The court, in this case, demand an explanation. I can think of only one reason why one would hold a bottle upside down, and that is to hit someone with the bottom of the bottle. Well, Your Honor.
See how the caught fish squirms to the last. Well, Apollo?
Yeah.
Your boss seems awfully concerned about this bottle still. I'm sure you can come up with a suitable explanation. Just like that.
Yeah. Just like what? Why would anyone grab a bottle upside down other than to... Oh, well, if you have to bend down to pick it up. I mean... It's kind of a stretch.
Don't let him trick you into thinking this explanation is the only legitimate one.
Is there really another?
Take another look at the court record. I believe you'll find a simple answer there, in plain sight.
How about you just say the answer in plain words?
I'm tutorializing you, Apollo. It would be hasty to deliver a verdict with unanswered questions indeed. Well, Mr. Justice?
Mr. Gavin said that the court in this case demand an explanation. Don't worry, justice won't leave until justice is done.
Perhaps the defense would care to enlighten the court. What evidence do you have to explain why the fingerprints on the bottle are upside down?
Yeah, let's see. Yeah, if he just reached down with his hand and picked it up, and then, I guess, transferred it to his other hand, then it's not the way I would do it, but sure.
Take that!
It's actually easier to show you than explain, Your Honor. Place that bottle on the floor next to your chair.
Excuse me? On the floor?
Yes. Now, reach down and pick it up without getting out of your chair. See? You naturally go to pick up the bottle by its neck with your fingers upside down. Look at the photograph taken on the night of the murder. The defendant, Mr. Wright, sat here, playing piano, bottles of grape juice on the floor to the side of his piano bench. He would have naturally picked up the bottles upside down several times.
Whoa, I can't believe it's so simple.
I mean, okay, you reach down, you pick it up, and you immediately just flip the bottle in your hand so that it's right side up again. The prints will be smeared, but not upside down or right side up. They'd be unreadable. Anyway,
recall our dinner that evening, Christoph. I was drinking my usual juice then, too.
basically, you used the bottle on the table to do the deed. But then you must have remembered. So you went and picked up one of the bottles from under the piano. And you switched the bottles. You took one of Mr. Wright's bottles and made it look like the murder weapon.
Order, order, order! What do you have to say to these charges, Mr. Gavin?
Fascinating. So this is the legendary attorney's famed tactic of misdirection.
But
You claim that I switched the bottle? Where is your proof?
proof? Well,
As I thought, more baseless conjecture. I'm afraid your bottle of proof is quite empty.
Objection!
I wouldn't be so sure about that.
Your Honor,
When you initiated the investigation of the hideout earlier, do you recall I requested an additional investigation? Yes, I have your memo about that here. Retrieve the bottles from under the piano at the Bush Bowl Club. And here's one of the bottles in question.
What? Are you going to dust that for fingerprints too? I would be surprised if any were on that but his. Mr. Gavin probably wouldn't make such a novice mistake. True. That bottle won't bear a trace of anything. Say, Apollo. Yeah. Why don't you go ahead and examine that bottle? There's a card inside, isn't there? And no fingerprints at all. Just humor me. Okay. That bottle will solve this case once and for all. But that's some bottle. I can see it already. Oh, what? There it is. And it's the Five of Hearts. What's this?
That card. It can't be.
Recall that unpleasant woman's testimony for a moment. Miss Ogar, really? Yes. Her little swindling Defachka. That night I planted the card like I was supposed to. And Wright lost the last hand just like he is supposed to. Then Smith switched him. But the planted card was gone. The trap failed. But this isn't... You're telling me that this is the planted card you disposed of? The one you mentioned in this piece of testimony. I happened to put my hand in my pocket and found a card. Yes, I snuck a peek at it and found it was the Five of Hearts. I had a feeling something might happen, so I disposed of the card before the game.
Disposed? Where?
There was an empty bottle of grape juice I had been drinking right beside me. I threw the card inside the bottle. The Five of Hearts. This is the card. The bottles were swapped. And the only one who could have done that was the fourth person in the club that night. You, Mr. Christoph Gavin.
Officer!
Yeah. That is all.
Is this your idea of revenge, Phoenix Wright? Revenge?
Revenge for the events that took away your attorney's badge 7 years ago. My past is like my logic, straight and true. Nothing's changed. All I did was point the finger of justice in the proper direction. Hey, that's my finger. Fine. I'm glad we could have this little tete-a-tete, right?
Yes, this is insane. What about me? Don't I get to prosecute anyone?
Well then,
I believe this time we've finally come to the end of our trial. Our tutorial trial. Mr. Payne, do you have a report for us on Christoph Gavin?
He's admitted everything. We're processing this arrest now.
I see. Still, one has to wonder why he would do such a thing. He didn't even have a connection to the victim, did he?
None that we know of.
Mr. Wright, have you anything to add?
I'm afraid I can't shed any more light on the matter.
About this victim, Mr. Shady Smith. His occupation was listed as traveler. An odd profession to be sure, and that's all we know about him.
Yeah, I'll arrange a follow-up investigation, Your Honor.
Good. Mr. Wright?
Yes?
7 years, and you still haven't lost your touch.
Christoph Gavin was a man with much significance for me, both as a friend and a lawyer.
He was extremely talented, to be sure.
I needed two things before I could confront him. The first was a place where no injustice would be tolerated, this courtroom. The second was a man who would tolerate no injustice. In other words, a defense attorney. You, Apollo.
Me?
This is a dark time for our legal system. A twisting of justice brought on by our very own initial trial system. We have to set it right.
Mr. Wright?
Our work lies ahead of us, and I, for one, am looking forward to it.
Well, this seems like a good time to announce the verdict. This court finds the defendant, Mr. Phoenix Wright, not guilty.
Yay!
At last! That was the twistiest tutorial I've ever seen.
Court's adjourned.
April 20th, 4:28 p.m. District Court Defendant Lobby number 3. Thanks, Apollo. You came through just like I thought you would. I'm pretty sure I didn't do a thing in there. It was you who cornered the killer. I couldn't have done it by myself. You sensed it too today, didn't you? Your ability.
Ability?
Yes, a sensitivity I lack. You'll come to understand it soon enough. Wait, I wonder if he means... I have one question for the witness then. You say you saw the moment the defendant hit the victim. Is this true?
Of course it's true.
What's this weird vibe I'm getting?
But what was that, Mr. Wright?
You'll have to find the answer to that question yourself. The answer. Right. Today was full of questions without answers. Most of them about Mr. Gavin. And the rest of them about you. What possible reason could he have had to commit murder? Perhaps you'll learn that in the days to come.
Wait.
You don't know, do you? This locket is the key.
But, oh, that reminds me. I met the girl whose picture is in your locket.
And she is way older than 7. Like at least 14, maybe 16. Your daughter, right? That's right, she's my daughter. You know, you were right about this locket. Eh? I took this off his neck the night he died. But it looks like our dear Russian scam artist saw me. So the truth is, this locket really did belong to him.
What? Wait, but that's perjury! You testified, you said that the locket was yours.
I said no such thing, actually.
What?
I merely said that it was a locket with my daughter's picture inside.
Wait a minute. Did you put the picture in the locket after the fact?
No, that makes... When? No, that doesn't make any sense. Subtle distinction, but a distinction nonetheless. And it's the truth.
But why? Why was the victim wearing a locket with a picture of your daughter inside it?
Sometimes the straightest path to the truth isn't the best one. Give it time. You're still just getting started with your career.
Speaking of which, I may be out of a job.
I work for Gavin Law Offices, after all.
I still can't believe I just saw Mr. Gavin getting led away in handcuffs.
Apollo?
Yeah.
How about coming to work for me?
What did I? You mean at the Wright & Company law offices? I mean, there's not a single attorney in my generation that doesn't know it.
I can't imagine that to be true, but...
Wait, but you're not a...
Oh, I turned in my badge, yeah. Not an attorney anymore. But he still owns the place, I guess. That incident 7 years... Oh, that incident 7 years ago.
That incident 7 years ago. That legendary trial.
And at the middle of it all was one man, Phoenix Wright. The case reached its sad conclusion, and he left law for good.
Are we talking about the last trial of the trilogy, of the first trilogy, or is it a trial we haven't seen yet? Are we gonna have a flashback? Have you ever thought about coming back to the courts?
I'm not qualified to stand in a court of law, I'm afraid. Didn't you notice in today's trial? There was a single piece of forged evidence.
Oh. Forged evidence? What are you talking about?
I'm talking about evidence that shouldn't have existed. A naughty magician's trick.
Of course, Gavin destroyed the card. Or got rid of it somehow. One piece of evidence struck me as odd, it's true. Just seemed, well, too perfect. I'll bet this was the forged evidence.
Take that!
You mean this, don't you?
I got this from your daughter, Mr. Wright.
Yes, that card couldn't have been found at the crime scene. Why? Because the killer took it with him when he left, leaving the wrong card in its place, luckily for us.
The court can't accept this evidence. It's a fraud.
A fraud? How can you be so sure? I would think the only person who could claim it was a fraud would be the one who took the real card from the crime scene. The real killer. My verdict was already handed down 7 years ago.
Then, you really...
Yes, I forged this card. One look at the crime scene should have told you it wasn't real.
But you can't do something like that and call yourself an attorney?
Who's calling themselves an attorney, Apollo?
So it's true. The rumor is true. 7 years ago.
None of that matters much now, does it?
What? What? I punched him. What?
It's your story from here on out, Apollo. Perhaps I can help you turn the next page. My office's address. Drop in if you like.
Mr. Wright.
Oh, about your uppercut. Try yelling, "Take that!" next time. I find it packs a little more punch. And Apollo, thanks for today. I had a good time.
What? But I have, no, what? And with that, Mr. Wright walked out the door. I have so many questions! And that's how my first trial ended. A lot of mysteries went unsolved. No kidding! And at the time, I had no idea they were all related. Every mystery that day, connected by a single thread of logic. I'd find that out soon enough. My name is Apollo Justice, attorney at law, and this is how my story begins. And I do the outro. Not one, not a single one. Why did Gavin kill Smith? Why did he frame Phoenix? Why did Smith cheat? What happened 7 years ago? Why did Smith have a locket with a picture of Phoenix's daughter in it? How does Phoenix have a probably 16-year-old daughter? What? Why? How? We're probably going to spend the entire game chasing down these answers. In the meantime, up here is a playlist of my Danganronpa V3 playthrough, and down here is a video that YouTube recommends. If you'd like to support a fuzzy little monster and get videos a week early, we have channel memberships for that. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!